What's up, the internet? Oh, we caught Jenna dancing. She didn't think I was going to bring her on right away. We caught her dancing.
I always dance to our music. I don't know what it is. I love the music that we have during our little like spots that we have. I just have so much fun. And then
shout out to Soundstripe.
Yes, the little ones that JD makes with the supervillain and the spider one. I was just sitting here laughing. Like, aren't we all a little supervillain?
Right. The process of writing those is maybe one of the most fun things we do on the experience, because it's just him and I in a shared voice notes file, like driving someplace and thinking of an idea and recording it into a voice note. It's one of the more fun processes we have. So,
and I get half of them, so that way it's spell checked.
This is the EXP Expo 2022, the one with all the twos, because there are a lot of twos here in the name. It's the second EXP Expo. It's 2022. This is number 21. Our 21st different panel. I think I'm up to like 44 hours on the air for the EXP Expo over the last 8 days, not 9, because there's 7 days a week. Anyhow, it's time to bring in our next guest. I first read our next guest's work when he was doing Spencer and Locke, which fits my jam perfectly because it's animals doing people things in some regard. And his book, The OZ, was a massive hit on Kickstarter and won him a Ringo Award and all kinds of stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me bring in David Pepose.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for having me. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be here for the 2022 Expo. Excited to be chatting with you guys today.
So let's start with this. You have a puppy that's sleeping next to you, and I want everyone to just collectively reach towards your screen and boop the dog on the snoot.
There's Ruby. my little kid. She's I guess a little less than a year and a half old. So she's very sweet. She likes being here in the office with her dad. And this is actually kind of only her second or third podcast that she's ever been privy to. So thanks for the shout.
Absolutely. And the little spot we played before was about giant spiders as pets.
I saw that.
If you could have, and I'm going to ask this, I'm going to start with a fun question at the beginning. If you could have any mythological creature or creature from pop culture as a pet, what would it be?
Oh, that is a good question. Boy, I mean, I'm a dog person by nature. And the problem is that like you think of all these cool characters and then you realize like being in a room with them would not be fun. Like, you could say, oh, the animals from We 3, and then you're like, no, they're packing heat. Same thing with like, like a phoenix, where it's like, yeah, but if you ever like experience bird poop, like that in claws, that's not something you really want to deal with. And so
what a baby Cerberus.
I mean that would be fun, because then there's three different dog heads that you can play with, and I assume 3 different personalities, but you only have to walk them once. I would say either that or I guess Clifford the big red dog. I know that's not like the most exciting answer in the world, but I feel
that's
like
awesome.
the more exciting the answer, the more dangerous the whole proposition is.
That'd be some really big dog poop you'd have to pick up, though.
Yeah. That's why I'm okay with Ruby being my little familiar down here.
Jenna, do you have one?
A Kelpie. Every time. There's just something about the stories that I grew up with. My grandfather, my papa, he was from Ireland, and the stories I used to grow up with were things of like Kelpies and stuff like that, And I always imagined this giant black stallion dragging my enemies down and then just like hanging out with me in the pasture.
See, I used to say my answer to that question would be Abel's gargoyle from Sandman. But after David's well-argued point, I think I'm going to go with Doug from Up.
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
that's the best answer. That's the best answer.
Yes.
Oh, Ruby, are
didn't
you
like
getting
that
jealous?
answer, though. She was not.
Oh.
I guess she's not a fan of Doug.
Well, then we'll go with the dragon from Peach Dragon there.
Aw, okay. I like that.
All right.
I really like that.
So on to real stuff. I want to start with, you won a Ringo Award.
Yeah. Boy, that I'm still pretty blown away by all that. It's been a couple of months. But yeah, we were so thrilled that our Yellow Brick Road warriors who supported the OZ, they really kind of came for us in full force to get us on the ballot for the Ringo Awards this year. We wound up getting nominated for Best Single Issue, as well as Mon House, our variant cover artist, being nominated for Best Cover Artist, and DC Hopkins, our letterer, for Best Letterer. And I'm probably telling myself the story, but I was there. I almost didn't go to the awards this past year. My aunt was in her last days fighting Alzheimer's. And so I had just gone home to sort of pay my respects. And I wasn't sure if it was right for me to go to a convention. And, my parents kind of pushed me, my girlfriend pushed me. Everybody said, you should really go. It'll help clear your head. And I remember being at the Ringo ceremony, and it's just me and a few friends that I knew at the table. But, we were up against some very stiff competition in that category. And I remember I was mid-text with my girlfriend saying, well, they're reading our category. There's no way we're going to win this one. And then Tom King and Mitch Jarrett's both said the OZ. I was shell-shocked pretty much the whole rest of the weekend. But it's such an honor. It's really kind of, I think, the biggest honor of my career thus far. And I was so grateful and moved that the Ringo committee and Mike Ringo's family would let us share a legacy like that. And I think it's kind of one small step for us, one giant leap for self-publishing and crowdfunding. And we're super thrilled. We have the award in a nice place of honor in our living room. Each member of the OZ team, the core team, I believe, has a Ringo Award of their own right now. So we're all very happy to be a part of it.
Well, hopefully you get to the point where you're keeping them in the bathroom. You've got enough of them that you can just keep one in every room.
Knock on wood. I would love it. But it's one of those things. They say comics will break your heart, but moments like that, sometimes comics love you back. And those are the moments that you really have to kind of treasure and savor, because those are the things that help get you up in the morning every day.
Absolutely. So for anyone who has, I don't know, been in a cave or been suffering through a year-long snowstorm like I'm dealing with now,
oh my God.
Tell people what the OZ is, and so people can understand what the book is and why, in my opinion, it's one of the coolest concepts out there right now.
Thank you. The OZ, I say it's what if the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz. Dorothy Gale's granddaughter is an Iraq war veteran who finds herself stranded in the war-torn land of Oz. And she's going to have to navigate her grandmother's former friend if she hopes to survive what is now called the Occupied Zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ. It's kind of our take on sort of an epic fantasy spliced with war fiction. I read the original Wizard of Oz books in college for an adolescent literature class, and of course I watched the Judy Garland film like many people did as a kid. And thinking about it, I was just like, Dorothy kills 2 wicked witches in a week and then splits. That's not a happy ending. That's Baghdad. And that really kind of crystallized the concept in a big way of sort of, looking at the costs of war and is there a just way of waging war in the first place? And what happens to the people in the trenches and the people caught in the crossfire? And how does war change these people? It's a fun book, and it's one that I think kind of perfects the formula that I had started with Spencer and Locke but is able to take it on a much bigger sense of scale and stakes. And it's the work I'm currently proudest of. And I can't wait for people to get to see our second installment, which is almost ready for the printer. We'll be sending that to the printer very soon, and getting digital and print copies in everyone's hands ASAP.
Now, are you going to crowdfund the second volume the same as you did the first?
We actually did. We crowdfunded our second installment in the fall, actually about a year to the day after our first Kickstarter. So we're just finishing the production on that right now. We are literally 2 pages of inks away from having that done. Yeah, it's super fun. We're going to do a third and final Kickstarter later this year once we have a good kind of critical mass of pages put together. But this story has been written for a long time, so we already know how it's ending. It's just it's physical labor to get this beautiful looking artwork out, and artist Ruben Rojas has really been kind of putting nose to the grindstone to get pages out as fast as he can without sacrificing any of the quality. And so I absolutely respect that. So yes, we will be doing a third Kickstarter for that relatively soon. Once we sort of have this second Kickstarter fulfilled, then we'll kind of have a better sense of timing on that. But we're very excited, and can't wait for people to get to see what's coming next.
Ooh, that sounds so exciting. So do you think you're going to have like a tier where it's going to have like all of them, so that way it's sort of like a catch up? Like
Absolutely. Yes, we will absolutely make sure that for people who didn't get on board with the OZ in our first 2 campaigns, that you'll be able to catch up. We'll even have tiers that for the collectors where we'll have certain amounts of all of the variant covers as a bundle, so you can get the whole thing as a bundled set. And lots of ways to kind of mix and match as well. We've had a lot of success with backer kit. We've had a lot of success with individual items on Kickstarter. So we'll be doing those in our third campaign as well. Just giving people a real opportunity to get on board and to experience what the OZ is all about.
That's so exciting. And I do have to ask, so every time I back a Kickstarter, and I think I do at least 2 a month, I always look for stickers. So would it be like a spoiler, or would it be like could you tell me, is there going to be stickers?
Yeah, we do have a sticker from that we actually had in our first volume that we will continue to have available for sale for our next Kickstarters. But yeah, our Winged Monkey Squadron sticker is a really fun one. For those who like enamel pins, we've also got you covered there. We've got a Winged Monkey enamel pin, and then for our second volume, we actually have Cowardly Lion Courage badges, which look spectacular. They were designed by artist Rio Burton, and they're real showstoppers. So I can't wait to be sending those out as soon as the books come in from the printer. And it's a very exciting book, and it's one that I think represents some of the best work I've done to date.
Okay, that's super awesome. So I am gonna ask you a little bit of a serious question. So with the big like paper outage that everybody across the entire industry is going through, in fact, all industries are feeling it at this point. How are you feeling about doing the whole digital versus physical? Like, I know a lot of people I've asked today have liked doing both because they like having it physically. And I'm the same way. I like having it physically. But a lot of other people have also said they like to at least get the story out there, at least just like the first few pages digitally. How do you feel about doing that?
It's tough because, like you said, it's very much an ongoing, ever-changing situation that you just kind of have to roll with. And, for me, I don't think I'll ever abandon print. I do like having a digital option. In the case of the OZ, for example, the vast majority of our backers, anybody who backed $10 or more, they are getting a digital copy of the book. So, and that sort of is a good way for me to feel a little bit better as a creator. It's been a chaotic year and a half. I think even more chaotic than our first Kickstarter. I think with our first Kickstarter, the paper shortages weren't really in the equation yet, and now it's a big thing. And so I feel a little bit better knowing that even if there are delays in terms of getting everybody their physical rewards, you will, it's not because the story doesn't exist. You have proof that the story exists. You will have a digital copy. So if you're kind of chomping at the bit to know what happens, you can open up that, that Dropbox link immediately and know what happens. And for the people who are, who do want to wait until there's a physical copy, it will come as soon as we're able to get it out. But yeah, I think the name of the game right now is just being as flexible as you can be. I do feel like, I think print is always going to be part of the equation. For comics fans, it's anecdotal and by far not scientific, but I feel like every time I hear people talking about it, it's I'd say 80% of the fans, if they had their druthers, they'd say they'd still pick up a physical copy. So I want to make sure that they're being catered to. So yeah, it's just sort of, we take it one day at a time, and and one issue at a time and one project at a time, and we just sort of know right now this is the new normal, and you just kind of have to be as patient as you can be and as flexible as you can be, and to get your stuff in as quickly as you can, just to try to get ahead of the situation as much as possible.
Definitely. And then so is it everybody that I know that does Kickstarter, it's usually them in their like garage or in their living room packing everything with like close friends and family. Do you ever have do you just like blast some music and it's just like you and your girlfriend and like a friend or two just like packing stuff up and sending it out?
Yeah, that's what we did for the first Kickstarter. And granted, I was in a smaller apartment then. We have since moved, thankfully, to a place with another room, which we've already sort of designated this will be your Kickstarter packing space / your office. But yeah, my girlfriend and I, we just sort of marathoned packing. When we sent everything to the printer and we got all the backlit surveys, we were packing trade paperbacks, while we were waiting for everything to show up. And then we were packing, single issues and sort of arranging them based on reward tiers. And then, we started packing everything. We would pack certain tiers, and then we would do all the labels and just start kind of printing those in batches. And it's time consuming. It's challenging. I think I did nothing but pack for like 3 straight weeks, and that was I think the week we brought Ruby home. So we were doing this with a big pen in our living room. So I can't imagine this being harder. Now that we sort of figured out kind of the mechanism behind all this, it's a little easier. But I'm also a little busier than I was a year and a half ago. So we're gonna hunker down as best we can. I might enlist my brother and his girlfriend to come by. I'll pay them with pizza or something.
Yes, that's the perfect payment.
it's an undertaking. I think it's honestly probably the hardest undertaking. It's much harder than running a Kickstarter. I think it's just the sheer man hours of packing and shipping. And the plus side is with every Kickstarter, you kind of learn how to make it a little easier on yourself, and you learn the process. And so it's very empowering at the end of the day.
You get to be like every step of the process when you do it through a Kickstarter. Like even the shipping part is like you.
Yeah. And it's like, I think it's a good learning experience. I think it's something that every creator should do, because I think that's kind of the number one obstacle a lot of indie creators have, is that whether they frame it like this or not, they're looking for permission. They're waiting for somebody else's permission to create. And I think that is very counterproductive. I think if your work is of professional quality, you should not have to wait for anybody to tell you to validate that it's worth printing. You should know that it's worth printing. And sometimes that means kind of, doing your own legwork. Sometimes that means crowdfunding to make sure that you're able to pay your team, that you're able to make the project financially viable. But I think learning how to not just assemble a team, not just to write a book, not just to be able to put a book together, but to be able to market your book, to be able to price your book, to be able to print your book and distribute and ship your book. These are all really important skills for creators to learn. And I think that's, they say, work until you don't have to introduce yourself anymore. And I think that Kickstarter is a really empowering platform for exactly that reason. Is you no longer have to wait for somebody else's permission to create.
That's
And,
awesome.
You're talking about how much of a slog it is. And I just always remember to a year ago this weekend talking to Jimmy Palmiotti.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, well, I got to clean out the garage so we could do the Kickstarter fulfillment. And I'm like,
Yep.
And it never occurred to me that somebody on that level would like do their own Kickstarter fulfillment.
It's, but I think it's for the best. I think it's one of those things, the less, I think projects like that are difficult to delegate as it is. There's a lot of moving parts. And so the less number of people you sort of add to the mix, the better it is ultimately. And, but yeah, I get it. I mean, Jimmy's a real one, and he's really just in the trenches, and I think doing a really fantastic job at evangelizing for crowdfunding. And I think that's great for creators of all levels of experience.
Absolutely. So the first thing, and I we've talked about this before, I have a vivid memory of getting an email from you.
Mm-hmm.
Going, hey, I have this book, Spencer and Locke. You should check it out. And then there was a giant cat, like cop detective person in it. And I'm like, well, just shut up and take my money.
Go ahead.
No. So for people who may have missed it when it came out, tell us about Spencer and Locke, but also talk about that. Where did that work ethic come from that I'm going to email I don't know how many comic book shops and just be like, hey.
Yeah, so Spencer and Locke, for those who don't know what that book is my very first book. And the quick concept is, what if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? It's about a hard-boiled detective whose partner is his childhood imaginary 7-foot blue talking panther. It was very much my love letter to two really trailblazing pioneers of the medium, Bill Watterson and Frank Miller. And it was the first book that I kind of gave myself. It was the first time I had given myself permission to say, maybe you could be a comics writer. I grew up in the Midwest. I didn't really have a whole lot of creative role models, so to speak. But what I did have was kind of a long string of dead end jobs that I was just grinding my soul to dust every time I walked into the office. And meanwhile, I just wanted to be creative, and I'd written a couple of short stories, but I'd always thought, well, it'd be good to be an editor or good to be a development executive if you knew how to do this. And that was sort of the initial impetus between writing Spencer and Locke, was like, oh, well, if you can prove you know how to write, then you can prove that you can do sort of this creative supervising work. And then the book came out, and I was like, you idiot, you just proved you can write. Maybe you should just write. But yeah, I think the thing about me calling comic shops, and I think that's something that I had been very worried. I'd been given some information that wasn't 100% true at the time, but I didn't know any better. That, if you didn't hit a certain number of pre-orders, that your book would get dropped, either by the publisher or by Diamond itself. And I had actually watched another person at my publisher watch their book get canceled. And I didn't know anything about their sales numbers or anything like that. But I was just like, well, that can't be me. We worked too hard on this book. And so I said, what is everything I could possibly do to make sure that we do not go below that threshold that we get canceled? And so the first thing I did was I said, okay, I'm going to call up every comic shop I can find. And the first volume of Spencer and Locke, I think I called 800 shops. And I think we cracked 1,000 for the second volume. It was a big undertaking. I think our entire pre-order window, I think for that first 3 or 4 weeks, I spent all day calling comic shops. I would wake up at 6 a.m. And start calling the East Coast. And I would keep calling until 6, 7, 8 p.m. to see if I could hit the West Coast and Hawaii and Alaska shops. So yeah, it was a real undertaking. But I think it was a really, it's not something I necessarily could pull off now, just in terms of sheer man hours, but I think it was a really good way to kind of build that foundation for my career, because I think a lot of comic shops, they're used to getting bombarded with press emails, but I think it's still a relative rarity to have a creator do their own legwork and say, hey, I have a book. And not only do I have a book, I'm willing to share with you a whole PDF of it. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. You get it. You can get a full sense of what this book is. And it was a really valuable experience, I think. And it's one that I was so moved to see how many comic shops were so supportive of that effort. I really only had a small number of comic shops that were a little dismissive about it, I guess, and you always sometimes you hit people at the wrong time or on a bad day. So I don't take that personally, but I think, by and large, we had so many comic shops that were really receptive to what we did. And I owe those retailers my career. And it's something that I'm always trying to kind of strive for. It's something that I'm always trying to, when I write a book, I think to myself, how could a retailer sell this? And that's probably why I'm so snappy with the high concepts, is because I want to give you something easy to sell. If the book has a certain kind of hook to it that you can say with a quick elevator pitch, maybe that'll help you put it in some reader's hands.
Right. No, the thing that sold me on it for sure was, one, conceptually, it was my jam. But two, is as a retailer, I got tons of emails that were clearly written by a press department. Yeah. That were clearly written by, okay, here's your elevator pitch, buy the book. And your email was like, hey, I'm David, I'm writing this book. Here's a PDF of my book. I really hope you buy it. Like, it just felt way more sincere. Yeah. And I think the sincerity, and it's still the sincerity that when I ran into you at New York Comic Con, and, I'm talking to you with Miss Jen, the sincerity that you bring to the table as a person, I think,
thank you,
goes a long way towards that. And so I guess that's that Midwestern values. That's that Midwestern thing, right? Like, I'm from the Midwest. I get it.
I think some of it's also, it's gratitude. I think, don't get me wrong, the comics industry has its fair share of dysfunction, just like any other business. But I think the difference for me is that I've come from a lot of other dysfunctional industries that I didn't really get the pleasure from the work that I do here. And, this is my astronaut job. Like, if you had told me as a 6-year-old, like, if you could do anything in the world, what would it be? I'd point to my issues of Spider-Man, or Daredevil, and I'd be like, or X-Men. I'd be like, that. I want to do that. And I get to do that now, like it's such an amazing job, and it's one that I try not to take for granted. I get to work with like these incredibly talented artists who get to kind of, I get to do make-believe for a career. And then not only that, but like, I get these amazing artists who bring it to life. I mean, it is really the perfect job for me. And so I try to just, stay grateful for it. I hope it shows, because I also recognize, having been on both sides of the PR table and the publicity table, I'm just like, I know that everybody's getting bombarded with stuff. And so it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It has to be good enough to stand out. And so that's the thing that I'm always really trying to push for. But I know that, people are doing me a favor. You guys are doing me a favor by having me on the show. And so I remember that, and so I try to make it worth everybody's while. And I try to give as good of an interview as I can with the stuff I'm allowed to talk about, because this is my dream job, and I want to be here for 30 years. And this is exciting. And I'm just so excited that people seem to want to go along with it for the ride.
I always appreciate that second line that you said there were the stuff I'm allowed to talk about, because well, as a former retailer, and now, like I said before in the last panel, I consider my day job to be comic book cheerleader. Like, I'm a very ugly version of the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders, except for comic books and people who make comic books and sell comic books and love comic books. So, it's always great to have somebody, and I said it to Arvell Jones, I say, who's a legend. I'll say it to you, who's, in the trenches now. I love when people have stuff they can't talk about, because that means there's work coming.
Yes.
That I get to spend money on later.
What I can say is this is going to be a very busy year for me. I have, hold on. I think
he has more than a handful,
including the OZ, the next OZ Kickstarter. I should have 6 different things out this year.
Ooh.
And granted, some of these things are shorter than others. I think half of these things are shorts. But even then, they're very cool shorts that when you see them, you'll be like, oh, that's dope. But yeah, I think unless anything else breaks, I have a meeting in theory with a publisher later this week. But yeah, in theory, I should have 6 things out this year. And so it's very busy. The 2 things I definitely can talk about right now, the OZ, we'll have our 3rd and final Kickstarter for the series later this year. Sort of the aftermath of Dorothy's quest for the silver slippers, and kind of her end game against the Scarecrow's invasion of the entire multiverse. We've got some really cool twists in store for this. We kind of get to see what happened to Dorothy. What kind of what did she see overseas? How has that kind of impacted her current campaign in the occupied zone? And just some really fun stuff. Including the Tin Soldier, Jack Pumpkinhead, the Prince of Lions. They're all going to get some really cool moments in this series. Not to mention the Scarecrow, who is, he really is probably my favorite villain to date that I've written, and he gets some really show-stopping moments, I think, in our last issue. So I'm very excited about that. Something else I can talk about is I'm going to be the capstone story in Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, Volume 3, Battle Royale, which is going to be on Kickstarter next month through Russell Nahelty's Wannabe Press. And yeah, it's super fun. I was so bummed out. Russell had invited me to do the 2nd volume of Cthulhu is Hard to Spell, and I was trapped under deadlines. I wasn't able to make it work. And so I promised myself when he came around for Volume 3, I was like, people buy Cthulhu, let's do this. And so I did a ton of research on the Lovecraft mythos. And I wound up working with my longtime variant cover artist, Mon House. First time we've worked on interiors together. So we're doing a really cool story. I can share that. This actually is the world debut of me sharing what this is. We're doing a martial arts story called The Master of Kung Thulu. And yeah, it's super fun. Mon really did a show-stopping job in the artwork for that. And so you'll be able to pick up that story and many, many others in the Cthulhu is Hard to Spell Volume 3 anthology, which will be hitting Kickstarter next month. February 22nd, I believe.
Cthulhu is hard to spell. I misspelled it twice this week.
Maybe it's just because I'm used to other languages. It just seems, I don't know.
Well, it's where do you put the H's? That's the big problem, right? No word has that many H's.
Except for Cthulhu, But yeah, no, it's fun. I mean, I have some other projects that are on the way, several of which I believe will be announced the next month or so. Project Sledgehammer has sort of been my baby. It's a book I've been working on since June, so it's been a while in the works. It's sort of the longest form series that I've ever worked on. And just really kind of the biggest scale of anything I've done to date. And so if you're a fan of the OZ, if you're a fan of Scout's Honor, my recent book at Aftershock, you're going to love Project Sledgehammer. It's a little bit in that vein, but it's got its own kind of twist to it. I've been really kind of throwing crazy things against the wall. And so far they've all been sticking. My editors have been very receptive to the crazy ideas that I'm throwing into this book. And so I cannot wait for people to get to see that. That'll be announced, I believe, in February for what I believe is a May release. So that's going to be exciting. My first horror series, which we're codenaming Project Pitchfork. We're sort of in the early writing stages of that, but that should be hitting stores, I think, around in time for Halloween, paper shortages notwithstanding. And that's my first horror series. Super fun. Without spoiling too much, I can say it's historical horror. And we've got a really nice twist to it that it's very fun. It's sort of it is deeply influenced by one of my favorite movies, and you'll know it when you see it. But that, I believe, will be announced probably around when Project Sledgehammer hits the stands. So we're very excited about that, and a couple of really cool shorts that are in the crime and espionage genres. Project Stardust and Project Crimson, as I've been calling them. Project Scarlet. And so those will be, I think Project Scarlet will be seeing pretty soon. And Project Stardust, I think, also will be out around the same time as Project Sledgehammer. So yeah, just some really fun stuff. I feel like I'm really starting to hit my stride as a creator. I think I've been knocking on a lot of doors, and some unexpected places are starting to answer. And it's been really validating for me as a creator. And it's really, I think, there's a lot of fun stuff in the hopper. So going to be a couple of years, and I'm very excited for readers to get to see what we have coming next.
That's so awesome.
You had some success with Scout's Honor. I mean, it did really well for Aftershock. And
yeah,
we actually hung out a little bit at the Aftershock party at New York Comic Con, which was super fun to meet you in person and not through a computer screen.
Yeah.
Is there more of that? Whether it's been announced, whether you can announce it or not, is there more story you want to tell?
I have some ideas. It's one of those things. The thing that I had actually been talking with Aftershock a little bit about, and sort of have had to sort of table just because my plate has sort of gotten so full so fast. But something that I had sort of floated their way was, I know they had just released the one shot format. Sort of an extended one shot. It's not quite a trade, but it's more substantial than a single issue. And I would love to tell another story in that universe with Dez, the Scoutmaster's son. I think, if Scout's Honor is kind of like The Last of Us, I could see some really cool like DLC, starring Dez in his own kind of one shot. We'd have to figure out like kind of the right tone and the right story, and seeing if Luca Casalanguida is available to do more, or if there's anyone in his wheelhouse that would be an appropriate substitution. But there are no plans currently. I can say that, but I'm never going to say never. I think it's a really cool universe, and I think Dez in particular was a really fun character that I think there's more to be said with. So, but I love the people at Aftershock. We've been talking a lot about potential next projects, and once I clear my plate a little bit more, we will be talking about some more potential stuff in the future. But yes, admittedly, my hands are very full currently.
Yeah, I always say this to people. Having too much work is a great excuse for not doing that thing that I'm asking about.
Yes.
Yeah. When you sort of see what's on my plate as of next month, you'll be like, oh, that's why he's busy. Got it.
Well, I'm glad you got to take a little break with us.
Yes,
a little just like an hour little rest of just random chit chat.
Yes, I know. I love it. I've been sort of hunkered down with a Google Doc open for the last like 3 days, and so it's starting to feel a little like The Shining in here. So it's nice to get out of that.
I know that feeling, bro.
Yeah. 44 hours and counting or something. Your schedule just says like all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy.
Well, I'm to the point now where I have to write my schedule in giant Sharpie.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I don't, I will not remember the thing that I have to do in 10 minutes.
Yeah,
so.
That's funny.
And then he always has to take a picture of it and send it to somebody, so that way he's like, if he misplaced the paper, he can pull it up somewhere. It's just
right.
Like,
if I don't show up, somebody's there to call me on it.
Yeah.
I like it. I like your style. That's fun.
Yeah.
So I do have a really important question.
Oh yeah,
I have a really important question. You're in a part of the country that's not actually cold, and that makes the rest of us feel kind of sad.
Yeah.
But if you were in like really cold weather, I have to know, what kind of grilled cheese sandwich and soup would you be eating right now?
Oh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Most important question of the day.
It's a cruel question because I'm on a diet. I told you I'm on a diet. Because grilled cheese and soup is like, it's my jam. There used to be a diner right down the street from me, and RIP, it closed. During these uncertain times, they used to have a grilled cheese on challah bread, and it was like 3 different types of cheese. It was American, cheddar, and Swiss, and just on this thick buttery bread. And then you get that with some kind of thick tomato soup. You throw in a little bit of like red pepper flakes in there.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, get that in a nice tall glass of root beer. That would yeah. I feel like I just like gained weight just like saying that out loud. But yeah, that's definitely no, 100%. I mean, I lived in New York before I lived out in California, and I lived in Massachusetts before I lived there.
Oh my goodness.
So I and even growing up in Missouri, the snow is not great.
They have cold
there. So I made a conscious choice to delete weather from my day-to-day thinking.
Oh my gosh.
Moving out to Los Angeles, and I mean, I can complain a little about the Santa Ana winds, I guess, but that's admittedly not much compared to what everywhere else in the country is dealing with. Sorry,
Jenna, I told Kyle.
I'll have you know,
I wanted to
I had to order
dinner.
cheese and soup for dinner. Like, they'll be here shortly.
Because that's literally been my question of the day. Like the 2 questions, I've already asked the one earlier, and then this was the secondary question. And I knew we had talked about you going on a diet earlier, and I was like, okay, well, I won't ask about desserts. I'll just ask about the main meal.
Okay. I have a question.
Shoot.
What diet are you on? And can you give me tips? Because I'm in a weight loss bet that I'm currently losing.
Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm doing with the caveat that there's still room for improvement on my end. So I've been going to the gym 3 times a week, and then every day, whether I'm at the gym or not, I do 30 minutes on the treadmill. Excuse me. So that's sort of my physical routine. And then for breakfast, I do a breakfast smoothie called Kachava. It's pretty low in sugar. It's 7 grams of sugar. And it's got like all sorts of, it's 25 grams of protein. It's got a lot of vitamins. There's no soy, there's no dairy. It's pretty easy to make. You throw in a cup of cold water, 5 ice cubes, put it in a magic bullet blender, and you're good to go for a meal. I do a chicken wrap for lunch. Just some grilled chicken, a little bit of black beans, some avocado, some sliced up tomato and onion, and then for dinner I will do a pinto bean and cheese burrito from Chipotle. I just got one down the street, so. And then if I'm still hungry afterwards, I'll do one of those single serving cups of Chobani, just a low fat Greek yogurt. That's what I've been doing. I've been doing sometimes I'll get a bean burger if I'm feeling frisky. My one thing that I do a cheat night. Friday nights I just kind of eat whatever I feel like eating. It's usually a pizza. I feel like saying you can never eat pizza again is a long time, but eating.
Oh my goodness, no.
Saying I can wait till Friday, like usually that kind of keeps me on the straight and narrow. That's usually what kind of I do in general. I like to be a creature of habit, and I just kind of like to find a couple of meals that I could eat every day, because then I'm just not thinking about it anymore. But yeah, it takes time. And I can tell you those first couple of days are the worst. Cutting fried food, cutting soda I was like full on like physically addicted to it. I think I had like 2 days of like terrible withdrawal symptoms. But once you kind of get through that hump, and you start building that habit up, then you like find yourself craving this stuff. Like I was craving a chicken wrap today. I had that for lunch earlier, and I was just like, it's a Sunday. Why am I craving the chicken wrap? I turned into one of those people. But I think beyond that, it's just, I do my workout times at weird times. When I go to the gym, it's pretty set in stone, but I was on the treadmill. I was writing, and then I realized it was 11:30 and I hadn't done any treadmill time. So I ran down to my crappy little home treadmill and walked on it for 30 minutes. It's just, I always, working out is a lot like writing, in that doing something, no matter how small, is better than doing nothing. And recognizing like, I'm never going to write a full script in a day. It just won't happen. I cranked out a 10-page script in 48 hours the other week. And that was like, my brain was like leaking out of my ears by the time that was done. And I think but that's a good example of like, that's like me trying to say, oh, I'm going to run like a 5K right now.
Oh my God.
With no training and no prep, I'm sure I could do it, if there was somebody chasing me, but like, I'm going to be in a world of hurt the next day.
Yes.
So, it's, you just got to be kind of patient with yourself and compassionate with yourself, and just recognize that like, you're not going to change everything in one day. If you can change like one small thing, and keep it that for a few weeks, you're already doing better than you were before.
Yeah.
And then once that's a habit, then you can start kind of adding different things to the mix, and you'll find that it does move faster than you would expect. You only need a couple of weeks to really kind of get your feet under you after a while. But no, it's an ongoing, evolving process, and it's one that takes time. So just be good to yourself. That's
so what I'm taking away from this is my switching from a large fry to a medium fry probably isn't enough.
If a buddy of mine is in a similar situation, and I told him, I said, pick one thing, either eliminate soda or eliminate fried food. Just do that right now, and if you can do that for a couple of weeks.
It's very easy to switch from soda to like sweet tea. It really cuts out like that carbonation.
When I switched from Monster to a healthier energy drink, it was the hardest thing I've ever done since I went to rehab.
It takes time.
Yes.
All right. We only have a couple minutes left. So where can people follow you? Where can they support you? And when you do announce what Project Sledgehammer, Project
Stardust?
Yeah.
Stardust. I almost said Starfish, but I'm like, no, that's Suicide Squad. Stardust,
Project
Crimson,
and Project Pitchfork.
Yeah. Yes. When you
Yeah,
announce those, where will that be so we can all be following?
Yes. Well, you first off, follow me on Twitter. It's at Pepose D. It's just my name right here. It's my last name and first initial. You can also follow me on Facebook at David Pepose Comics, Instagram at Pepose D. I promise I will start updating that more when I have more announcements to share. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Pep Talks, at bit.ly/pepnews. I will be talking all about this stuff at great length. And you can visit my website at davidpepose.com.
Perfect.
Dope.
Thank you so much for being here, David.
Of course.
Congratulations on the things you can announce. I know what one of them is, I think, just because mutual friends. But but it's one of those things I'm very excited for you, and I'm very excited to watch the kind of lift off that's going to happen this year, my friend.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys so much for having me. It means the world to have your support. And I'm excited to show you guys the things I can't quite share yet. But stay tuned. 2022 it's going to be the year.
Absolutely.
Always love chit-chatting with you. Seriously.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Stay tuned. In like 2 minutes from now, we'll have the Latchkey Manifesto from Fat Jack's Comic Crypt in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. It's a 2-hour comic live sale. And then following that, Jenna will be back to interview Dan Wickline, because nobody wants to hear me interview Dan Wickline again. It happens like once a week, and nobody wants to see that. So we will be back. We will be back in just a couple minutes here on The Experience.